Welcome to Stories Between Us, an anthology podcast of short, fictional stories rooted in the lives, desires, and connections of queer men. These stories are told through AI voice narration. This podcast explores the quiet, complicated lives of queer men. The glances, the tension, the choices made after dark. Every year, these three best friends take a trip together. Nothing fancy, just something to remind them who they are outside of work, situationships, and the chaos back home. This year, they booked a gay cruise. 4 days on the water, no rules, no responsibilities, and definitely no privacy. One came to rest, one came to feast, and one came to get touched, in every sense of the word. And that last one, that was Terrance. And this first chapter is about him. They boarded in Miami with too much luggage, not enough patience, and were already sweating through their shirts. The line to get on the ship was chaotic. Girls in carnival wigs, boys in mesh and heels, couples arguing in matching tees that said, just married but still slutty. You could smell 3 different kinds of sunscreen and somebody's cheap weed vape. Terrance wore gray nylon shorts, a cropped athletic tee that hugged his chest, and a crossbody bag slung low across his waist like a belt. Nothing was loud, but everything was fitted, like he knew how to show up without showing off. Terrance was the kind of man who didn't just walk. He strutted, hips moving with purpose, thighs brushing with every step like they had something to say. Brown skin glowing, chest out, arms flexed just enough to let you know he'd been hitting the gym even if he still ate cheese fries in bed. He knew what he looked like, and he knew this cruise was built for men like him. By noon, we hadn't even unpacked, and Terrance was already on deck 5 in the spa lounge, flirting with a bartender who looked like a Disney prince in compression shorts. He skipped lunch, said he was saving room. Everyone knew what that meant. The ship had a room called the Blackout Room. That's what they called it on the itinerary, just vague enough to slide under cruise rules, but everybody knew what it really was. This is a gay, after all. The doors were blacked out. You didn't just walk in, you checked in. 2 men sat behind a small table, no uniforms, just some black polos and calm faces. You gave your room number, signed a waiver, took a condom, took off your shoes. Nobody said much. It was quiet, controlled. You stepped inside and left your shame at the door. Inside, there was dim lighting that made everybody look good until you got too close. House music pulsed through the floor, soft, steady, like a heartbeat you weren't sure was yours. Black curtains split the space into 3 sections. Couches for talking, semi-private rooms for whatever, and the dark zone where anything went. Terrance walked in like he'd been there before. He hadn't. But that never mattered. He peeled off his shirt, tucked it in his waistband, stretched like he was warming up for a basketball game. His cologne still clung to his skin, sweet and sharp. Sweat had already started at the back of his neck. That's how you knew he was excited. He scoped the room like a predator, but with charm. He made eye contact with a muscle daddy in leather straps. He smirked at a group of guys side-eyeing everyone by the lube table. But then he saw him. Tall, Dominican, chain resting on his thick pecs, low taper fade, basketball shorts and nothing else, standing against the wall like he owned the place. When their eyes met, something shifted. Not slow motion, just sharp and immediate. No words, just a nod, a silent agreement. Terrance followed him into the curtain like he'd been summoned. Damn, he was excited. What happened next wasn't fast. It was layered. He kissed rough with his hands everywhere. There were moans not loud, but low. There were other people around, but none of it mattered. Bodies brushed past them. Someone accidentally grabbed Terrance's arm mid-thrust. He didn't flinch. A dance track pulsed low through hidden speakers. Steady, hypnotic, like the room itself had a rhythm. Half the bodies moved in sync without meaning to. Terrance nutted once, then again, then fucking again. He lost his contact lens, didn't stop, and he didn't care. He took a break at one point, legs shaking, lying flat on his back while someone brought him a paper cup of water and an orange slice. The Dominican man was somewhere in the shadows, already back at it with somebody else. Terrance just watched, breathing and smiling. By the time he left, it was nearly 6:30 p.m. His shirt was wet. His legs hurt. His phone was at 12%. His ego, though? Fully charged. The hallways were quieter now. People napping, showering, waiting for the dinner buffet to open. Terrance walked through them like a king returning from war. No towel, no shame. Just skin still glowing and shorts barely clinging to his waist. A crew member gave him a look. He smiled back like, "Yeah, I earned this limp." When he got to the room, Adrian was laid out in bed, watching some food documentary with a bowl of ice cream balanced on his stomach. Julian sat in the corner, reading, headphones in, legs crossed like he was in a yoga studio. Terrance dropped his clothes on the floor, grabbed the half-empty water bottle from the nightstand, and collapsed on his bed. The air in the room was cold. The sheets were stiff. His thighs were sore in the best way. The kind that reminded him what his body could still do. He looked over at Adrian, who didn't even glance up from his spoon. He thought about that gold chain, that look, the rhythm, the way he wasn't asked to talk or explain anything, the way his name didn't matter, the way he felt wanted, not for who he pretended to be, but for what he gave in that moment. He grinned to himself, eyes half closed. Tomorrow he could do whatever he wanted. But tonight, he was full. You've been listening to Stories Between Us. That was Chapter 1. Chapter 2 begins now. Adrian woke up hungry, not just for food, but for something that made him feel good without explanation. He didn't do cruises to party. He did them to enjoy himself. Slow, steady, no pressure to be sexy or loud, just peace and cruise ship food. He was the last to fall asleep last night, still buzzing from whatever sugary rum drink they'd given him on the deck. When he sat up in bed, the room was quiet. Julian was already gone. Terrance still face down in his towel, laying in bed. Adrian stretched, the kind of stretch that pulled from his thighs to his back. His stomach growled. Adrian was big, stocky, broad shoulders, soft in the middle, strong legs, round cheeks that always looked like they were holding in a laugh, skin smooth and dark, beard shaped like he kept clippers in his carry-on. He moved with ease, not slow, not rushed, just solid. He showered quickly, threw on a tank top and loose shorts, slid his feet into sandals and hit the breakfast buffet before the rush. Deck 7 smelled like waffles and fried meat, warm syrup, eggs that were a little too wet, fruit sitting in condensation. The line for omelets stretched past the juice station. He got in the line anyway. He liked watching the crew work, the way they cracked eggs with one hand, how fast they moved without ever making eye contact. When it was his turn, he asked for 3 omelets, shrimp, spinach, and feta, and one with everything. No shame at all. He found a window seat. Sun pouring in, water stretching in every direction. He ate in silence, watching a couple argue quietly at the next table. One man kept pushing sausage links to the side of his plate. The other just scrolled his phone. Adrian didn't judge. He just dipped another piece of toast in his yolk and kept chewing. By noon, he was back for more. Not because he was starving, but because he could. Jerk chicken, rice and peas, mango slaw, 2 beef patties, plantains. He sat alone again, but didn't feel alone. People watched him. Not rudely. Just watched. Like they weren't used to seeing someone so comfortable. A few nodded. One guy gave him a thumbs up. Another came over and said, "You really going in, huh?" Adrian just smiled and said, "Why not?" He flirted a little, mostly with the food staff. He asked about sauces. He asked about ingredients. One girl from the back kitchen snuck him a bowl of oxtail that wasn't on the menu yet. Said she liked the way he appreciated flavors. That made him smile bigger than anything else had so far. The ship rocked a little more in the afternoon, just enough to remind you that you were floating. Adrian leaned into it, took his 3rd plate outside, found a quiet spot near the edge, and sat with his legs stretched, stomach full, shirt riding up a bit over his belly. He didn't pull it down. He scrolled his phone just to scroll. Then he saw it. "Hope you're eating good out there. Miss that smile." It was a text message from his ex, the one who never quite knew what to do with someone like him. His ex always said the right things, but never stayed long enough to mean any of it. Adrian stared at the screen for a full minute, then locked it and sat it face down on the bench. He finished the last bite of fried plantain and washed it down with a ginger beer that burned just enough to make him blink. There wasn't gonna be a reply. Not today. He spent the rest of the afternoon at the dessert bar. Sampled everything. Cheesecake, chocolate mousse, guava pastries, little desserts in glass jars. Sat at the counter like it was therapy. Let the sugar quiet the ache. By sunset, the light was soft and golden. Couples slowly danced by the railing. The DJ was playing something old school and smooth. Adrian stood for a minute watching 2 men sway against each other. One whispered something that made the other laugh. It wasn't jealousy, just recognition. The kind of quiet love that looked real. He didn't need it right now, but he knew he deserved it. He walked back to the room slower than usual. Belly full, feet tired. The hallway smelled like sunscreen and cologne. His shirt stuck to his back a little. Inside, Julian was still journaling, calm as ever. Terrance was awake now, scrolling through photos he had taken to post to his Instagram eventually. Adrian kicked off his sandals, dropped onto the bed with a groan that came from his knees, and let his body spread out like a man with no regrets. He didn't say much, didn't have to. His eyes said enough. This trip wasn't about transformation. It was about permission, to feel good, to eat what he wanted, to take up space, to be soft and messy and satisfied. And he was. You've been listening to Stories Between Us. With Chapter 2 behind us, there's only one more story left to tell. Chapter 3 begins now. The next day, Julian was up before the sun always was. Didn't need an alarm. His body just knew when quiet was still possible. He moved slow, not sleepy, just intentional. He slid out of bed without waking anyone, pulled on the black silk robe he packed just for this trip, the one with his initials stitched in gold thread. It moved like water around him. He padded across the cold floor barefoot, grabbed his book and water bottle from the nightstand, and slipped out the cabin like a shadow. The ship was almost silent. Just the low hum of engines and the occasional distant thud of someone stumbling back to their room. The hallway lights were dim. Everything smelled like seawater and cheap cleaning spray. He liked it that way. Julian was tall, lanky, all clean lines and calm energy. Brown skin with a golden undertone, the kind of face that aged slow and eyes that missed nothing. His head was shaved clean, his beard lined up, and his toenails clipped and oiled. The man had standards. Quiet didn't mean careless. He made his way up to the adult deck, found the cabana he'd scoped out the day before, far left corner, partial shade closest to the railing, laid his towel down, fluffed the cushion, and settled in. He opened his book, crossed one leg over the other, and disappeared. That was Julian's gift. He didn't need noise to feel important. He didn't need to perform. While other people screamed their joy, he curated his peace. Each chapter, each page, a world he chose over the one happening around him. By 8 a.m., the deck started to shift. Staff setting up umbrellas. Boys doing thirst traps by the infinity pool. The thump of a remix bleeding in from another level, but none of it reached him. His headphones were in. His music was low. Something instrumental with just enough piano to keep his thoughts from floating too far. Late in the morning, someone sat near him. He didn't see him sit down, just felt the energy shift, a quiet presence, brown skin, locks, swim trunks, a calm posture, the kind that was very similar to himself. He looked up just once. The man nodded. Julian nodded back, then kept reading. They didn't speak, didn't need to. It wasn't about flirtation. It was about the rare moment where someone enters your orbit and doesn't try to claim it. They just share the air. Julian closed his book around noon. He went for a swim, let the water cool his body and rinse the weight off his shoulders. He floated for a while, sun on his face, arms stretched wide like he was willing to let go of everything. Afterward, he grabbed a towel, got a smoothie from the wellness bar, and sat down to start writing in his journal. He wrote about the moment, about the stillness, about how tired he'd been before the trip. Not physically, but emotionally. The kind of tired that makes your smile feel like work. He wrote about needing this version of himself to return home with. The rest of the day was soft. He walked the track deck in the late afternoon, sun dipping low, breeze starting to kick up. Couples passed him, singles too. Some loud, some desperate, some pretending not to be. He just observed. That night was the silent disco. He almost didn't go, but something in him said, show up, even if just to be there. The room was glowing blue. Headphones pulsed with 3 different channels. Some people danced wild. Others just stood, swaying, eyes closed like they were in church. Julian found a corner, put his headphones on, picked the slowest song he could find. Anita Baker. His body moved the way he felt. He danced like nobody owed him anything. At some point, he saw Terrance enter the room, his shirt unbuttoned, chest out, already lip-syncing to whatever pop banger was playing. He saw Adrian, too. He was sipping from a cup, barely moving, but smiling wide. Julian didn't wave, didn't interrupt his own flow, just kept dancing. When Julian walked back into the cabin, the TV was already glowing. Terrance was in his bonnet and pajamas, propped up with a bag of chips in his lap. Adrian had his legs stretched across the bed, holding the remote like he ran the place. Julian didn't ask. He just changed, climbed in, and pulled a blanket over his legs. They put on the same movie they always did and proceeded to quote every line. Laughed before the funny parts even came. Adrian pretended not to cry at the end like always. Terrance talked through the credits. Julian just sat there with a full belly. It wasn't deep, but it was friendship. Just them in pajamas on the last night of the trip. Soft, close, and exactly where they were supposed to be. By the time they hit the port, everything was sticking. Shirts, thighs, passports inside cheap plastic pouches. The party was over, and the line for customs was long enough to test any friendship. People were cranky, sunburnt, half of them hungover, the other half pretending they weren't. Julian stood tall in a clean white tee, fresh sneakers, sunglasses that somehow hadn't caught a single scratch. Calm as ever. Adrian was carrying a tote bag that clearly had stolen snacks in it. 2 croissants, a banana, and something wrapped in foil. He didn't even try to hide it. Terrance had on black shades and a limp he earned the hard way. Scrolling through his phone like he wasn't standing in a federal line. Nobody said it out loud, but they all felt it. The way the air gets different when something good ends. Not sad, just different. The silence that settles when the fun's behind you and real life's waiting in baggage claim. We shuffled forward inch by inch. People complaining, babies crying. One girl yelling at her friend about who hooked up with who. Adrian just shook his head, leaned on the railing, and said, "See? That's why I stayed with the food." Julian laughed under his breath. Terrance smiled like he was holding back a confession. Every moment from the last 4 days sitting right there between them. The laughs, the snacks, the sweat, the playlists, the mess, the peace. Terrance pulled out his phone like clockwork, leaned back against a pillar and said, "Hold still, y'all look crusty." He snapped a blurry, half-blinking selfie of the 3 of us. Puffy eyes, wrinkled shirts, no filters. Just facts. He dropped it in the group chat with one line. "Y'all ready for next year?" None of them replied. That trip was done. But the friendship, the one living in inside jokes, ugly pics, snack crumbs, and reruns they never finish, that wasn't going anywhere. That's the part that will last. Thank you for listening to Stories Between Us, a series about male queer connection, tension, and everything that gets felt but not always said.